And so,
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay.
okay, we're already recording. Okay, well, then I'll be on good behavior.
Sergio, that's what you wanted, right? We want to record it for everyone.
Yes, no, recorded, sure. I was just gonna wait until a few more folks arrive.
This is the second Grammy show. This is the one we saw.
Okay, I'm now the host. Oh, I can pause, stop, okay. Got it. Smash.
Reese might be getting a special one-on-one session.
That's all right. Feel special then.
I figured December would be a slow day. I didn't want to. That's why I took it, because I didn't want to disappoint my friends with a small audience.
You would never disappoint, Sergio.
Oh, very nice, very kind.
We'll wait a few more minutes. It's 12 o'clock, but we'll wait a few more minutes, let a few more people come in.
Yeah, can we stop the recording and then restart it when more people come in? Just because, you know, when I put it.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. We gave a few extra minutes. We all knew it was going to be a low turnout. I'm Gerald Eaton, your moderator for the 5th monthly professional series. This month we have Sergio Leal. Oh, got another one coming in. And he will be talking about, was that the criminal, what was it?
The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act.
The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start off with some announcements, and let me pull those up. I'm gonna go ahead and share this screen. Can you all see? Uh-oh, let me move this over here. Hey, can you all see?
Yeah, do you mind maximizing it?
Okay. How does that look?
I'm seeing your, I'm not seeing the big one. I'm seeing kind of the step-by-step slide deck.
Okay, let me see, how do you get out of here? Let me see, stop sharing. Uh-oh. Insert draw design. Just give me a quick second. Layout.
Sure.
What is this? Start from the beginning. Admit. Okay. Can't get it to maximize. I
That's
did
okay.
before.
We just go back. It's all right.
Okay, now I need to.
It should be something like start presentation or something like that at the top corner.
Yeah, I did that, and then it went to. Oh, there we go. But I need to see which one I need to share.
He has like 17 screens, I think.
Yeah, that is my only issue, is that I have too many screens. And then, and let me see this. Let me do a share on. Here we go. How about that?
Perfect.
Okay. Announcements for December 2022. Just a reminder that class 42 applications are being taken. They close May 30th, 2023. The next round of interviews is the week of January 16th, 2023. So if you know of anyone or you're co-sponsoring or suggestion of anyone, get them in now for class 42. Our New Year's social will be January 5th. That's Thursday from 5 to 7 at the Houston Zoo. I'll let people kind of read this. This is being recorded, so we'll all see this, and I'm pretty sure everyone has received a announcement already, but it's the Leadership Houston Alumni social on the January 5th. Stephanie Taylor is looking for meeting space. I believe everyone, if I got it, everyone else got it. I know I'm real bad with messages in group me. So if I saw it, I know everyone else should have saw it, but she's looking for a meeting space. If we can help her out for January 9th, that's coming up very soon. If you know of anyone, any place, or she's her new position, well, not so new now, with the not-for-profit, so they don't have a lot of funds. So however we can help her out, let's help her out. Congratulations, Francisco, who's also joining us right now on his appointment to the Hobby School Advisory Board. And he just never ceases to amaze us. Every time you turn around, he gets an award or an appointment, it seems like every month.
Congrats.
Thanks, Gerald. I appreciate it.
Congratulations also of Karim Zolfakar on joining the Executive Advisory Board of the Association of Medical Facilities Professionals. Congratulations. Sergio, who will be presenting, got accepted into the Hispanic National Bar Association's Podier 25. New class member, our 2023. Congrats to Landy. Honored as a partner and 2022 Woman of Impact by the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce of Greater Houston. Go Landy. She was on, but she had to jump off. Daniel Villanueva, featured by Understanding Houston. Go Daniel, he's doing a lot of big things at the University of Houston downtown. Let's continue to congratulate him and keep in contact with him. Also, Ada Ortega spoke at the Latina Leadership Series on the importance of Latina equal pay. That was also on LinkedIn if you guys got that, but she did a great job there. Dr. Rima spoke at the Young Women's Leadership Symposium. And Rima is everywhere. Let's keep supporting her as she keeps doing her thing. Heidi Obi presented at the STEM Town Girls at Woodway Elementary, inspiring the next generation of architects and engineers. Go Heidi. Again, Ada with the Houston, Texas Toys for Kids Drive. The next social we have actually is also on January 5th. This is Thirsty Thursday. We will get with David and Ramit to announce, because we have the other social that's from 5 to 7. So this, so that
Might have to reschedule that one. Yeah, I might have to reschedule it.
Yeah, we can either have it going afterwards or, you know, somewhere near there, but we'll keep you all updated and we'll post what those dates and times are. Jerry Moye, let's wish him a very speedy recovery. As you can see, he got his hip replaced, and we're gonna call him the new Steve Austin, as he said, the Bionic Man.
And did we skip Doritas? I thought I saw Dorita had one too in there.
Okay, let me see. Dorita, let me see. Dorita, no, I didn't see that one. And unless you know that one.
I'm on the call. I just wanted to mention to everyone that we, with the the men's Final Four, what I've been working on since September is a literacy program, and every Friday we're at a school where we do a lot of activities for third graders that promote excitement and energy around getting them to read. And so if anyone is willing to do 2 hours on a Friday afternoon, it's usually like 12 to 2, you got to check in about an hour early. Looking for Leadership Houston people to participate. And I've already had a couple do so, but just want to make sure people know that I recruit and get volunteers for myself on that program. So
Put me down for the 13th, Rita. I can make that.
okay,
Hey,
copy.
Dorita, message me later because the Junior League has a volunteer kind of outreach group called Impact Volunteers, and they should be able to help too. Message me later and I can connect you with a way to apply for that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone have any more announcements that were not already listed? Again, this is being recorded. Make sure that I have the recording on.
Hi, this is Key Wilson. How are you?
Hey,
Hey,
Key.
Hey, y'all. Did y'all discuss ginger kale?
Yes, we did share that. Yes.
Okay, and then one other announcement specifically to Class XL is it looks like we found a location for the annual meeting, and it will be probably most likely at Condente on Richmond. And it's going to be a nice festive party. So we, I think with that location, it's going to be good, and they're being very flexible with us. So in January we'll reconvene to coordinate that. Just FYI.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Any more announcements? All right, let's jump into the man of the hour. Sergio, let me introduce Mr. Sergio. Sergio is the head of compliance for North America mergers and acquisitions at Ericsson, which is a leading network and telecommunications company. As head of the compliance for North America, he oversees Ericsson's compliance program for more than 10,000 employees, providing services to companies such as AT&T, Verizon, Google, and Facebook. And in his role as head of M&A compliance, he supports all of Ericsson's M&A activity, and he most recently worked on the company's successful $6.2 billion with a B acquisition of Vonage, a cloud communications provider. Previously, Sergio served as Chief Compliance Officer of Lane Christensen Company, a US-based global water management, construction, and drilling company, and was head of compliance for North America at Bilfinger, a German industrial services company. Before his anti-corruption practice, Sergio worked in civil litigation, beginning his career with the international law firm of Baker Botts, LLP. For a time, he also worked as a property insurance plaintiff lawyer, where he helped Houstonians who were wrongfully denied insurance proceeds after Hurricane Ike. Outside of work, Sergio serves as chair of Family Houston, a 118-year-old not-for-profit providing mental health, financial coaching, and basic needs services to about 4,000 Houston area households. Sergio is also the immediate past president of the Hispanic Bar Association of Houston, a professional organization comprised of more than 200 attorneys, judges, and public officials. Other notable activities and achievements include Sergio served on the Economics Advisory Committee of the University of Texas at Austin, his beloved alma mater.
Horns.
At Columbia Law School, he was elected to the Student Senate 3 times, serving as Senate Secretary in his second year, and studied with the great professional Jack Greenberg, one of Dr. Martin Luther King's attorneys during the Civil Rights era. Icon.
That guy's great.
At Lamar High School, he was the first Latino to be elected student council and student body president, and served on the HISD Superintendent Rod Page's Student Advisory Committee. Rod Page was President Bush's appointment.
Secretary of Education as well.
Yes, that's right. In 1996, he was a member of the Lanier Middle School chess team that won first place in Texas and placed 10th nationally.
Yeah.
He's a proud alum of the United Way's Project Blueprint, Class 34, Leadership Houston, Class 40, of course, the best class ever, ever, ever.
That's right.
And he is sustaining life fellow of the Texas Bar Foundation, whose mission is to provide funding to enhance the rule of law and the system of justice in Texas, especially for programs that relate to legal assistance for the underserved and administration of justice and ethics in the legal profession. In 2023, he will become a member of the American Leadership Forum's Class 60, the Hispanic Bar Association's Podium 25, a general counsel talent pipeline for up-and-coming in-house legal talent, and is on his way to serve as adjunct professor at Texas Southern University's Thurgood Marshall School, beginning in the fall. Hey, Cynthia Johnson, she's not on here, but shouts out to her for helping her, for providing the support for him to get that TSU.
Thanks, Cynthia.
On the committee service front, Sergio has served in various roles for the DePelchin Children's Center, Discover You, Big Brothers Big Sisters, and Bel Air Little League. For fun, Sergio loves rooting for the Astros, go Stros, and the Texas Longhorns, hook 'em horns, there you go, playing poker, and experience new activities with friends. He's the son of Mexican immigrants. Sergio is a proud born and raised Houstonian. And although he likes to stay busy, he considers his most important role to be husband, father, and married to his beautiful wife, Adria, and father to 3 wonderful children. Nikolai, Dylan, and Max. That's 8, 6, and 3.
Thanks, Gerald.
So let's give it up for Sergio.
That's a lot, man. I'm sorry. I really am. That's too much. I knew I should have shortened it. But appreciate that, Gerald. And I know you're sick, so thank you for continuing. You could have bowed out, but you stayed with it. So thanks, Gerald. Appreciate you.
I'm here for you.
All right. Well, thanks y'all for joining. And I guess we can get the presentation up. I think I sent it. I could share it if you want, Gerald. Let me see here.
Okay, let me see. Okay. Do you want to go ahead and take that one? That way you can lead it. Let me see.
Yeah, let me pull it up here. Okay. See, can I share? How do I share on?
Actually, I'll go ahead and
I can do it. I see it. Boom.
you hit that share at the bottom of the screen. There you go.
Can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
I'll never drop you, Dorita, for American Leadership Forum. Never. I love this class. You guys are a blessing. Leadership Houston. You guys are amazing. And I'm really grateful to be part of this group. So thanks for joining. I hope y'all get something out of this. I did kind of include a kind of catchy title. It's probably not as much fun as the title would suggest. But today I will talk about my area of expertise, which is the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and Anti-Corruption Compliance Program in the corporate space. Please, if you have any questions, go ahead and speak up. We don't really need any sort of hand raise or anything like that. We just, whatever you guys want to say, this is really just friends talking. And I have maybe about 20, 30 minutes of material. So, if you have stuff to say or ask, you're curious. But I do want to start off with a disclaimer. These views and opinions are my own, and they do not represent those views and opinions of anyone or any organization I am affiliated with, have been affiliated with, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to make sure that's clear in case anybody watches this in the recording and thinks otherwise. Okay, so today's agenda, I'll give you an introduction to the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Then we'll go over anti-corruption compliance programs and what that means for international publicly traded companies. I'll also share some interesting statistics that I find with regards to enforcement and the areas where a lot of these violations occur. And then I'll discuss example matters, specifically the ones I've worked on at Lane Christensen, Bill Finger, and now at Ericsson. And then we'll close it up. But of course, if y'all have any questions, please jump in. So to start, I wanted to say that corruption is a crime virtually in every country in the world. If you look at the far left, the United States, I'm proud to say, we started it with the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act of 1977, the granddaddy anti-corruption law of them all. And for a long, long time, up until the 90s, it was really the only law internationally on the books. There was a lot of controversy. I think it was under the Carter administration. There's a lot of interesting legislative history where senators and congressmen were concerned that this law would put American businesses at a disadvantage when conducting business internationally. But I'm happy to say through American leadership, other countries have joined in this effort. And now you have laws similar all over the world, including in China, Russia, Mexico, France, the UK. Basically, every country is getting on board. And so it's something to be proud of, I think, as an American, that we led the effort. But before we jump further into the details of the law, why do we have anti-corruption laws? Well, quite frankly, anti-corruption laws are necessary to combat corruption in the private space. When you have corrupt transactions, that leads to poor quality, overpriced goods and services, and ultimately the general public, the global community suffers. I mean, here's an example of a building that collapsed and many people died. It's very tragic because it's usually those folks that have the least means, the ones that don't have any control over who gets the contracts and who wins out the big bucks, that sort of thing, that end up suffering the most. And I even found a research paper that links corruption to children's deaths worldwide with respect to sanitation, health, safety, you name it, especially in the third world, the developing world. Those folks really suffer the worst consequences of corruption, which is primarily driven, ironically, in the first world space, right? All these big companies that do business abroad, and we're not the only country with companies that that do business abroad. Other countries as well, and unfortunately, the rule of law is not as strong in other parts of the world as it is here. And so this is an ongoing effort, and there's still a lot of work that remains. So I do take my work very seriously. I'm very passionate about it, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to fight even a little bit against global corruption, to help people, worldwide. So that's why we have anti-corruption laws, to make sure that the global community is, receiving and the high quality goods and services they deserve. All right. So let me jump in to the FCPA itself. Like I said, it was a law that was introduced in 1977, and it prohibits companies with U.S. connections from making corrupt payments to foreign officials in exchange for obtaining or retaining business. And Congress enacted the FCPA in response to an investigation conducted by the SEC following the Watergate scandal. And that investigation revealed that many U.S. companies had spent hundreds of millions of dollars bribing foreign officials to secure business abroad. And the FCPA targets such practices through both anti-bribery and accounting provisions. Now, this is something that I think is a little bit, some people find controversial, is that this law is extraterritorial in its reach. So it oversees and enforces the law for activities that take place oftentimes outside of the United States territory. So if you are a publicly traded company doing business, for example, in Germany, Latin America, Africa, and you conduct bribery or you commit bribery, the U.S. will enforce that law, even though it sits outside the U.S. jurisdiction, which is oftentimes not the case for U.S.-based laws. Gerald, I see your hands up. You're on mute, sir.
I have a question, and I want to also encourage everyone else that to ask questions as we go along. But my question is, how is the U.S. able to enforce foreign governments to adhere to these laws as well?
Well, it's a great question. And we do not have that power. We do not go after foreign governments. That is not, we do not prosecute foreign officials themselves. The US government prosecutes the companies that are traded on our publicly exchanged funds. So on the NASDAQ, the New York Stock Exchange, if you are a publicly issued company in the United States, then the US has jurisdiction over you. Now, if you bribe, let's say, a foreign official in Mexico, the US will not go after the foreign official. The US will go after the company that actually committed the bribes. But good question. Any other questions? I'm going to change this 1 second, this because so I could see. Let me see here. I want to change it so that I don't look up every time on. Let me see here. Sorry, y'all. Please bear with me. Okay, I think we're better now. Okay. I'm going to present again. Oh, here we go. All right, great. And Gerald, please, if you could, I can't see the screen anymore, so if you can say if anybody has their hand up, and don't raise your hand, just jump in, y'all. So the FCPA, I'll just keep going, has two main provisions. It has the anti-bribery provision, which makes it unlawful to provide anything of value to a foreign official directly or indirectly for the purpose of influencing that public official, again, to obtain or retain business. And that is criminal liability enforced by the U.S. Department of Justice, led by the great Merrick Garland. And so criminal liability is a very high standard for the lawyers in the room. It's a beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a very high standard. But an additional provision that the FCPA includes is the accounting provision, which means that, and this is to your point, Gerald, that every issuer, so any company listed on a U.S. stock exchange, must maintain accurate and detailed books and records, and maintain an internal control system to ensure accuracy of the books and records and prevent illegal activity. Now that is civil liability, which is enforced by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, and that would require not a beyond a reasonable doubt standard, but a preponderance of the evidence. So that is more likely than not standard, which is a lower threshold. And as you'll see during the discussion, many of these FCPA violations include accounting provisions violations, because that's a lot easier to prove than the actual criminal anti-bribery provisions, which again has a higher threshold to demonstrate. So the anti-bribery provision has a few key elements. It is unlawful for a U.S. person, U.S. company, or any other person in the U.S. So see there, Gerald, there isn't anyone, there's nothing here about foreign officials themselves. It's unlawful for U.S. people, U.S. companies, or any other person in the U.S. with the corrupt intent to offer, pay, promise to pay, or authorize payment of, directly or indirectly, and that indirectly will be important later, anything of value to a foreign official, foreign political party, or any candidate for foreign political office, while knowing that all or a portion of the payment or thing of value will be offered, given, or promised directly or indirectly to a covered official for the purpose of influencing any official act or decision, inducing any act or omission in violation of a lawful official duty, or securing an improper advantage in order to assist in obtaining, retaining, or directing business to any person. And I'm sorry for the legalese, but these elements are very important. And oftentimes, defenses against potential violations rely heavily on these various factors, right? Whether it was with corrupt intent, whether you're dealing with a foreign official, whether the purpose was to influence, et cetera, et cetera. But these are the elements of the anti-bribery, again, the criminal provision of the FCPA. Now, penalties for violating the FCPA include fines for both the company and individuals. And my daughter's here, sorry for the interruption. Injunctive relief and or the imposition of a monitorship. So injunctive relief means that they can actually order your actions or have some sort of, it's not financial penalty, but it's more, it could have like a limit on where you can do business, on whether you can receive loans, et cetera. So your actual activity can be impacted as a result of a violation. And you can get the imposition of a monitorship, which is like I would liken it to a probation officer, which will oversee the company and provide objective feedback to the government on how the company is doing with respect to any sort of improvements or remediation efforts. And of course, this does happen sometimes. Imprisonment can also apply for individuals that violate the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. And I want to say that, and this is important because it is my line of work, that it may be resolved without resulting in a trial. The government likes to utilize a mechanism known as a deferred prosecution agreement, plea agreements or non-prosecution agreements. And these are basically agreements that set out requirements to fix issues that led to the corruption. Basically, you have to build compliance programs, you have to pay a penalty, you have to have a monitorship. And if you're successful during that period and the monitor basically, or the government agrees that you've met your burden and you've met the requirements to resolve the violation, they will release you. Now, a note on penalties. Some people think that in order to get a big penalty, you have to make a big payment of a bribe, but there really is no connection between the size of the bribe and the size of the penalty. A small bribe that lands a lucrative contract can result in an expensive fine and can also result in imprisonment. So the size of the actual bribe has no bearing on the potential penalty that a company may receive. And so here, I want to share just kind of the top 10 penalties. We're talking large fines that adversely affect shareholder value. They affect the company's ability to do business. And you can see at the very top, Goldman Sachs, number one at 3.3 billion. And Airbus, number two, You'll see foreign companies here, but all these foreign companies have one thing in common, and that is that they are publicly traded on U.S. stock exchanges. So again, either the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ, what have you. So although it is a U.S.-based law, oftentimes prosecution for violations apply to companies based in other countries as well. Okay, so just to kind of get in the details, who's a foreign official? What does that mean? But I think it's easy sometimes. If the president, prime minister, king, queen, those sorts of folks come to mind right away. But it's actually more broader than that. It includes high and low rank officials and even employees of instrumentalities of a foreign government, which what that means is state-owned or state-controlled enterprises. So in other countries like in Mexico, Brazil, China, etc., many of the companies that do business in various industries are actually government companies. Like Pemex is an example. That's the Mexican-owned national oil company. So although you're the CEO of Pemex and you're not really an elected official, you are considered a foreign official for the purposes of the FCPA because you essentially work for the government. This also includes public hospitals and public universities. So any sort of professor at a publicly funded university in, I don't know, Europe would qualify as a foreign government official. This also includes, I know we have Reese on the line, police officers. I know we have Francisco on the line. He's also a government official, not a foreign one. These are US based. So I guess that's important to note as well. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act applies to foreign government officials, not domestic government officials, although I will add there are plenty of laws on the books that prohibit corruption and bribery in the domestic space as well, although we will not be going over that today. Also, any public official of an international organization or public party like the World Bank or the United Nations, and any candidates for political office. Essentially, if you're receiving funding from a foreign government, you will likely qualify as a foreign official for the purposes of the FCPA. But what's considered a bribe? I think that's a question a lot of people have. I think it's easy. Cash is pretty obvious, right? But this could mean more than that. So gifts, excessive travel, entertainment, which we'll talk later. That's important for the nonprofit space or for the company space. Services, loans, stock, political or charitable contributions or donations, employment, internships, scholarships, basically anything of value. And above all, any promises to provide any of the above. So it's like not just cash, but the promise to give cash at a later time with corrupt intention that fulfill all those elements we saw earlier. That will also be considered a bribe for the purposes of the FCPA. There was actually a case very recently with, I think, Chase Bank. JP Morgan Chase actually was offering the children of Chinese government officials internships, essentially for free. They weren't getting paid, but that is something that we categorize as a value, right? It is something that people early on in their careers, they desire. They want those internships at big time banks to put them on their path to success. So that actually was an FCPA violation in a recent matter. So anything you can think that someone may want that is valuable, you name it, that could be considered a bribe. So how can a bribe be made? Well, obviously directly to a foreign official, you go and give them cash, or you give them a promise for cash or what have you, or indirectly through family members of a foreign official, the companies or entities owned by a government official, foreign official, charitable organizations that benefit foreign officials, or agents through third parties, including consultants, advisors, and representatives. And that last part's really important because many of these companies that are publicly traded on US stock exchanges rely on consultants, advisors, representatives, lawyers are a big part of this, you name it, that work on their behalf abroad. If they pay bribes, if say a lawyer working for a publicly traded company pays a bribe on behalf of that company, then the company violated the FCPA. So it's important for companies to oversee and screen and basically conduct due diligence, right, before going into business with a third party acting on their behalf. So how, where, and why, or when, where, why do payments to government officials become bribes? So it's inducing a foreign official to use their influence to assist a company, influencing a foreign official to obtain business for the company, or influencing a foreign official to retain business for the company. So it's not necessarily that it's new business. It may be that you're not going to lose business. Essentially, anytime, anywhere, for any reason that would give the company an improper business advantage. would be constitute a violation of the law. And so here are some examples where violations may arise. Wrongfully directing business to a person paying a bribe, granting preferential treatment as a result of a bribe. So think of a bidding process, maybe giving that company that pays a bribe additional access or information that the other competitors don't have. That would be a violation of the FCPA. Refraining from taking official action against the person paying the bribe. So for example, if you have a tax penalty against the company and you pay a bribe to remove the tax penalty, that also would be a violation. To clear equipment through customs without all the proper paperwork is kind of a more nuts and bolts example. You know, you're trying to get your stuff shipped, your items, logistics through certain, countries, and a government official gets in your way and says, no, you pay them a bribe, and that goes through now just fine. That is a violation. I think I mentioned decreasing tax penalties. If you think there's a low likelihood of getting caught, it doesn't matter. And even if the foreign officials demand payment, conducting sort of extortion, that doesn't matter. Those are all violations of the FCPA. So the federal government does not mess around and expects that US-based publicly traded companies take this very seriously and basically create compliance programs and hire people like me to ensure that these activities do not take place. And aside from the criminal provision of the FCPA, we also have, as we noted, the books and records provisions of the FCPA that requires the company's books and records and accounts to be kept in reasonable detail to accurately and fairly reflect all transactions. So you can't cook the books, you can't you can't pay a bribe and then mark it down as something else, because if you do that, you'll have two violations of the law. You'll have the violation of the actual bribe payment, and you'll also have the violation of books and records, which means you'll have to account for two issues. Here's a actually funny note, well, not funny, but interesting, that if you actually pay a bribe, my advice is you mark it in your books and records accurately as a bribe, so you avoid the books and records violation provision of the FCPA. And so what this means is we must require detailed and clear invoices, receipts, and documentation that accurately reflect the nature of a company's transactions. So if a third-party auditor or your internal audit team cannot make sense of what happened in a business transaction, you are not likely meeting the standards of the books and records provisions of the FCPA. So it's very important that when, example, you're signing a contract or filling out a justification to bring on a third party, that you're very clear about what they're going to do for you, the scope of work, how much you're going to pay, when they're going to deliver it, etc. That it's all very tight and neatly documented, so that if you're ever audited or reviewed, people know exactly what happened, and you're not perceived to be, like I said, hiding the reality of what occurred. So I know it sounds strange, but if you pay a bribe, it's best for you to mark that down accurately as a bribe. Okay, well, I went by, I think, a little faster than I thought I would. I don't know if I have enough material, y'all, so please chime in and ask questions. But here we're going to talk about anti-corruption compliance programs. So this is the best way to fight and prevent corruption from taking place within your organization. And the DOJ and SEC actually provide a resource guide that they put out there. Second edition came out in 2019. That basically gives you a guidebook on how to create or promote an effective anti-corruption compliance program within an organization. And you'll see these are the 10 hallmarks of an effective compliance program, starting with leadership and culture, number one. And this is what I really love about my work, is that I have to hang out with executives. They have to and help them set the tone at the top, right? These are leaders leading large organizations, and they're very important. And so they have to be able to promote an ethical culture so that employees feel safe to speak up and share their concerns of any potential violations of the code of business conduct, the law itself, other policies and procedures. But it goes around the whole wheel, I guess you can call it, of compliance. It includes policies and procedures, compliance organization, which folks like me, you got to have also risk assessments, which allow you to assess the specific nature of the risk for your area of business, because every company is different and every compliance program therefore must be different, because what works in the oil and gas sector may not work in the telecommunications sector, may not work in the medical field, et cetera, et cetera. There's also training and communications. So you always have to train your employees to know how to manage situations that may arise. So if they do, get approached for a bribe, how do they handle that? Who do they call? What should they say? What can they do? Of course, not pay the bribe, right? But that's not so simple. You can't just say, hey, don't pay the bribe, you're fine. You have to give them advice on how to manage and conduct business lawfully. There's also reward and sanctioning. What does the company do to promote ethics and compliance, to promote an anti-corruption culture with regards to both rewarding those that are promoting the culture and also sanctioning those that are found to have violated the rules that are there to protect us. There's also third-party management, which I noted. These third parties really provide a significant risk to companies with respect to potential bribery violations. And of course, we have allegations and investigations. So those are internal investigations. I actually started in anti-corruption compliance as an internal investigator many moons ago. And that's how you figure out what went wrong, and you figure out who needs to go and what sort of discipline or remediation you'll have to undertake to resolve the issue that you found. There's also monitoring and testing. And basically, this is a system that kicks the tires on your program at all times. It's the auditing, it's the reviews, it's the et cetera, to make sure that your program's continually improving and not just sitting static, because as you know, business is dynamic and ever changing. And so you must also have a compliance program that is dynamic and ever changing to meet the demands of our modern world. And last but not least, mergers and acquisitions, due diligence and integration. You have to have a program. So if you acquire a company and you don't conduct your due diligence and you don't check for any potential violations, and you find later after you purchase the company that they actually already committed violations of the anti-corruption laws, there is a thing called successor liability, which means that you now will be owning the potential liability, so the fines, the monitorships, the penalties of the company you acquired. So in my role in M&A due diligence and M&A compliance, I review companies that MIDE is interested in acquiring and basically kick the tires on their compliance program. I review their investigation records, I review their third-party management records, basically their compliance program, and then go back to our company and evaluate the risk associated. And it's not so easy, right? Because in the M&A context, you may not always get all the information until after you acquire a company. But essentially, you need to do that work if you want to mitigate the risk of corruption. And I'll go quickly over three of these: policies and procedures, the third-party management, and the allegations and investigations. So I'm not going to go over all these, but these are just examples of anti-corruption policies and procedures. It runs the book from your code of business ethics. You got sponsorship and donations, right? If you sponsor a large event for a public official for corrupt purposes, that could be a violation. Travel and expenses, if you give large gifts or you take folks out to really fancy dinners, or you take them out to some of the world's premier sporting events like Champions League or Super Bowl, et cetera, with the intention that we went over, to corruptly induce improper business advantage. These are all policies on the book. So we want to be very clear with our employees, the company's expectations and their role in all of this. And you do this with proper anti-corruption policies and procedures. And so I did talk a little bit about third parties and how they create this very high risk, actually. And I think there's a statistic that like 80% plus of all FCPA violations involve a third party in some form or fashion. So it is basically something that every company must maintain, this third party management to reduce their risk. If you don't have a third party management program, you're not really conducting good compliance. You're likely just setting, you're sticking your head in the sand like you see a little ostrich there. And it doesn't even mean that you know exactly what the third party is doing for you. It also includes conscious disregard or deliberate ignorance, willful blindness, head in the sand sort of stuff. So if you're not reviewing your third parties and conducting due diligence for potential corruption risks, you essentially know for the purposes of the FCPA, and that is not a defense. You can't say, well, they didn't tell me they were going to pay a bribe. I should be off the hook. No way, Jose. You, sir, need to conduct proper. If you are a major publicly traded company, this should be standard. So what is a third party? It's easy to say, okay, I said agents, I said, lawyers. Of course, I like to rag on lawyers. I am one myself, but there are many examples. You have suppliers and vendors. You have minority owners of joint ventures. So if you have a company that you own 90% of a company, and there's a 10% owner, that minority owner constitutes a third party. And if they conduct bribery on behalf of that joint venture, then you yourself may be in violation of the FCPA. It also includes customers, distributors, resellers, sales agents, etc. Not third parties are the company's subsidiaries or company employees. Basically, anyone that's already housed within your own organization is not a third party for the purposes of the FCPA. And like I said, third-party intermediaries are big risk within the anti-corruption space. Here's a list from Stanford's FCPA clearinghouse. It's wonderful if you Google Stanford FCPA. If you're an anti-corruption nerd like me, I go to this basically at least once a month just to kind of see what's new. But here it shows you the number of FCPA matters that have taken place since 1977. And you can see there that there wasn't a lot of enforcement up until the 2000s, right? This wasn't really enforced heavily up until you start seeing 2004, 2005 kick up. But that third-party intermediary line, so you see the bar is total number of enforcement actions. And these are brought by both the DOJ and the SEC. You see third parties are basically near the top, matching the all graph too. So it basically tells you that the vast majority of these violations include third-party intermediaries. So it's incredibly important, and this is why it's considered an expectation for publicly traded companies to review the third parties they do business with abroad. So here's another bit of program that I mentioned. So we went over policies and procedures, we went over third-party management. Now we're going over investigations and remediation. So you have to have a program that includes a mechanism to report suspected misconduct or violations. So you have an employee hotline, you have a phone number, you have an email address where employees can speak up and raise any concerns. I always tell folks they don't have to have a smoking gun to report a violation. If they have a good faith suspicion or concern, that is more than enough to report something. We'll take care of the rest. We'll do the review. And we should have an efficient and reliable process for conducting investigations and to take remediation activities as appropriate. So if we conduct, let's say, hey, so there's an employee calls and say, hey, I think bribery is taking place in, let's say, Madagascar. We do our investigation and we find that the company president of Madagascar, in fact, is conducting or is paying bribes. We can't just sit on that information. We actually have to do something about it. Remove that individual, maybe review the compliance program within Madagascar, to make sure that the program is tight and that there are no gaps or holes in the program. And you should always use lessons learned, again, like I said, from investigations to update your internal controls and your compliance program. Because if you're not doing that, then you're not really meeting your standard. The standard for your obligations with respect to investigations and remediation. Last but not least, and this is really important, you can ensure that there's no retaliation against the whistleblower. If you allow for retaliation to occur, you essentially are chilling speak-up culture. You're preventing people from actually raising their concerns in a way that would be effective, and you're going to get a lot less of that feedback loop that you need to really mitigate and reduce your risk of corruption. Okay, how much time we got? 10 minutes. All right, I'll jump through. So this is just a quick statistics here, just some kind of fun stuff. We have this Transparency International organization, which every year comes out with its Corruption Perception Index. And so this is the perceived levels of public sector corruption in 180 countries and territories around the world. You see at the very top, I don't know if you can read this very well, but you have countries like Denmark, Finland, and New Zealand scoring as the least corrupt countries. And then at the far end, the most corrupt countries in dark red, you have countries like North Korea, Yemen, Venezuela, Somalia, Syria, South Sudan, etc. So we use this information to assess how much of our compliance program resources we should dedicate, right? So if you're doing business in Denmark, it's not to say you shouldn't have a compliance program, but maybe you should allocate your resources to other higher risk countries you may also be doing business with, So if you have Denmark, Russia, Mexico, Germany, et cetera, in your portfolio of countries, you can utilize this corruption perception index because the government does expect you to appropriately use your resources where the corruption is likely to be. So if they see that you're spending 90% of your anti-corruption compliance budget in Denmark and only 10% of it in Tajikistan, they're going to question the veracity and quality of your compliance program. And y'all might actually be wondering where the United States falls. Well, the United States, I think, is, you see there, number at 67. So we're a little bit orange. I think we're out of the top 20 most recent. We used to be like number 12 when I started. We've actually been sliding over the years, unfortunately. But we're still, I think with other, low corrupt countries, at least with respect to the way that the Corruption Perception Index is compiled. And if you'd like to learn more, you can go to transparency.org. I think the 2022 one's out. I just couldn't find the slide deck, and they'll be coming out. This is like big news in my space whenever it comes up. We're all just saying where the countries are being ranked. And I pulled some additional statistics from the Stanford FCPA website, and it shows here, the average length of prison sentence here is 28 months for imprisonment or house arrest. 93% of defendants settle with the SEC. So I said the vast majority of these are books and records violations. Then there you go, 93% of them fall under that gamut. So it is harder to get the beyond reasonable doubt standard, the criminal item with the DOJ. But they can always point to sloppy books and records. Either you have good books and records and internal controls, or you don't, and that's why you'll see oftentimes SEC penalties in the mix. Not going to go over all of these, but you can go over the recording, pause it. If you have questions, please reach out. And here, just highlighting the location of improper payments from 2013 to 2022. Again, this is from the FCPA Stanford Clearinghouse. You can see the countries where a lot of the FCPA enforcement actions took place, or where the violations occurred. So China's at the top, followed by Brazil, India, Mexico, Russia, Venezuela, Angola. These countries shouldn't surprise you. I think these countries are countries that we typically, think about when we think of corruption. But these are also big countries where companies do business. So it's not just that a company is corrupt. It's also a country may have a weak rule of law, or may have corruption in its midst. It's also, I guess, an area where there's business, right? So even though North Korea is considered a very corrupt country, you won't see them on this list, at least because there's not a lot of, there are actually no U.S. business. I think they were banned, right? I think Francisco would probably kind of confirm that. But you won't see North Korea on this list because our businesses, our publicly traded companies, don't do business in North Korea. I won't jump into too much this, but here it shows entities and individuals being charged. So it's not just companies, but there are individual prosecutions that that are filed under the FCPA, and there is fines, penalties, prison time for those folks. And you'll see the various kind of enforcement actions every year for the FCPA claims. And here, big numbers, total penalties essentially over the course of the year. So you'll see in 2013. Out of all the sanctions that took place under the FCPA, there was $721 million that were essentially there were fines levied against companies. But we had some really big years in 2016 and in 2020 at I think billions and billions of dollars essentially. We have tapered off a little bit. In 2021, there's about $360 million in penalties, and then $900 million in 2022. That's still counting. But it's not something that is taken lightly, and you can see it's been enforced in to a large degree across several administrations in the recent past. And this is something that I do want to note. The government does want to encourage voluntary disclosures. So if you, for example, know that a violation occurred at your company, there's benefits to disclosing that, right? So let's say you conduct an internal investigation. We'll go back to the Madagascar example, and you find that bribery occurred. Just because you found that bribery occurred and you cleaned it up doesn't mean you cleaned up the underlying issues that led to the bribery. It doesn't mean that you are free from potential violations of the FCPA. No. The government can still find that. There could be a whistleblower situation. And if you fail to voluntarily disclose that, you can have penalties levied against you. So you can see the huge difference, $92 million versus $241 million. That's big money. So if you do find a violation, potential violation of the FCPA, you should work with your counsel, your outside legal counsel, on how best to manage that and report that to the government. And so quickly, I know we're running out of time. I worked on a few matters recently. Like I mentioned, Lane Christensen was a US-based company. They had the SEC go after them for violations of the books and records provisions for bribery that took place in Central Africa and Australia. Essentially, in this case, there were bribes paid for reduction in tax penalties, bribes paid for basically access to cross different borders in Africa, et cetera. And there was a period of 2 years, basically reporting back to the SEC. So I went to the SEC in DC and essentially gave them updates on our program. And after 2 years, the SEC was satisfied with our work and released the company from further obligations. And I worked at Billfinger, which paid a 32, well, I guess Lane Christensen was about $5.1 million in penalties. Billfinger, a German engineering firm, was a $32 million penalty. Now, this was a different type of corruption. This was grand corruption, whereas Lane Christensen was considered kind of lower level corruption, since you were paying bribes to folks at borders and paying, government officials in the tax offices. Here, this German engineering firm, Billfinger, did grand bribery. So they paid large bribes to basically deciders in Nigeria to access natural gas facility contracts. So these publicly owned companies put out an RFP, Eastern Gas Gathering System. This was actually a big controversy in the oil and gas space, which included companies like KBR, Wilbros, et cetera. And Billfinger was actually in a joint venture with Wilbros, and they paid bribes to gain contracts for these natural gas construction projects. And last but not least, I currently serve at Ericsson, which paid more than $1 billion to resolve our Foreign Corrupt Practices Act case. And this was for violations in many countries, Djibouti, China, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Kuwait. Essentially, this included lavish entertainment, lavish gifts, actual financial bribes, etc. And there was an imposition of a monitorship in this case, as well as in the Billfinger case. There was no monitor, Lane Christensen. And so this monitor essentially is an objective third party that reports to the DOJ status updates on our progress with respect to the remediation and enhancements to our compliance program. So those are the 3 matters that I've had the privilege to work on or continue to work on. And I think that's it, y'all. I probably ran over time and I'm really sorry. Gerald, how am I doing? I can't see. Did people fall asleep? Probably pretty boring, but thanks y'all for your time.
Actually, we're right on time. So it's 1 o'clock. We do say an hour from 12 to 1. Do we have any questions?
I have a quick question if we have time.
Yeah, please.
On the third-party management, we talked about how the onus is on the corporations to do their due diligence on these third parties that act on their behalf, perhaps in other foreign governments. And it's not enough for them to say, oh, we didn't know what they were doing. They did this, on their own or without my knowledge. One of the elements of the FCPA was proving the intention. So how does the US government do that if it's more of a negligent issue of you not doing your due diligence?
Well, it's saying that you yourself are not, you're intentionally turning a blind eye.
Okay.
You're intentionally not conducting proper due diligence and running the risk of third parties actually committing bribes on your behalf. So that is usually how that's resolved, but that's a good question.
Okay.
It's not, negligence typically isn't a defense. In this case, it's essentially the knowing element includes failure to conduct proper due diligence.
Gotcha. Okay.
Cool. Well, thanks, y'all. Unless there are any other questions, sorry, that was, I think I talked more than I thought I would, but I hope y'all enjoyed this little spiel. It's what I do for a living. It's kind of fun. And anytime you hear of, these big kind of corruption scandals in the news, I hope y'all think of me as the anti-corruption part, right? Anti-corruption, not pro-corruption. But yeah, no, I enjoy it very much. And that's it, I guess. Gerald, I don't know if there's anything else.
No, it's 1:01. Yes, we went 1 minute over, and to be cognizant of everyone's time. The only last announcement that I have is, I believe, Dorita, you're going to be doing January's professional series. Is that correct?
I think Sergio was going to get back to me, but I think so.
Yes, you are our star for January.
Okay, what's the date on that?
You're not sure. Well, that's for you to help me decide.
Okay, got it. Okay, thanks. Awesome.
Thanks, Rita. We all take care. Have a happy new year.
Okay, bye-bye.
Everyone enjoy your holidays, and
thanks for moderating, Gerald.
Us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much. This was so enjoyable. Have a happy new year, guys.
Thanks,
all righty.
Bye.
All right. Bye.